We're on? All right. We'll get rolling since we've got throngs of people online just dying to get going. We do say welcome to anybody who's watching by way of YouTube. Glad that you've chosen to be a part of our gathering today. We are in 2 Chronicles, and we are looking at chapters 22 and 23, making our way through this book and telling all sorts of great and wonderful stories. Today we learn about two of the Bible's great heroes that you probably have never heard of. Jehoshaphat, and Jehoiada are the two that we're going to be talking about near the end. But we're going to begin in chapter 22 talking about a corrupt king, another one of those corrupt kings. As the folks are coming in, we're going to take a look back, and I provided a sheet out there for everybody who's here today to take a look at. It's a nice sheet that talks about the kings. We really need to kind of do a little bit of a historical review of things. Now, I know I could call on all of you and you could tell me all this right off the top of your heads, but just in case there's somebody who's a little behind in their studies, I will kind of go over that material for you. On that sheet of paper that you have, which is a really good sheet of paper to have if you haven't held on to it before, it's worth having and keeping in your Bible. But it shows the division of the kingdom. Starts off with the United Kingdom under Saul, David, and Solomon, and then the division of the kingdom into the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom, the tribes of Israel and the tribes of Judah. We're talking primarily in 2 Chronicles about the southern tribes, the kings of Judah. That's what the chronicler focuses on in 2 Chronicles. But we're going to have some overlap with the northern kingdom tribes today, so it's good for us to kind of think about them for a second. If you look at the top of that list of the northern tribes, all those first kings, Jeroboam and then Nadab and Baasha and Elah and Zimri. There was a lot of infighting, a lot of assassinations that resulted in the one king replacing the other king. Remember that when the kingdom was united, God had established the throne of David and had promised that there would always be a son of David on the throne. And we call it the Davidic line, the Davidic line of kings. That remained in Judah. When the northern kingdom split off, they made everything up from scratch. We've talked about this before. Jerusalem's in the southern kingdom, and so to worship according to the religion that David set up, the religious structure that David set up, you had to go to Jerusalem to do that. Well, remember that Jeroboam didn't want the northern kingdom people going down to Jerusalem to worship because he was afraid that they would defect and stay in the southern kingdom. So he set up a whole religious system in the northern kingdom, and he based it on the tradition of Yahweh, the southern kingdom tradition. But over the course of time, it easily picked up foreign elements. And so it became a very polluted, corrupt worship system. Well, the kings, are rising up depending on who can get power and who can hang on to it. In the southern kingdom, you've got the Davidic line. And so it's always important to have a son of David on the throne. And that's what, kind of keeps things going. And we're going to see in today's two chapters how the Davidic line was actually threatened, and was threatened by a descendant of the northern kingdom, a descendant of Ahab. So look at the northern kingdom tribes there, and you will see Omri, O-M-R-I, Omri, about the fourth king down, fourth or fifth, depending on, actually about the 6th or 7th. But Omri was a military leader who came to power by taking out the king before him. And Omri is the father of Ahab. You don't know Omri much. The First Kings, which talks more about the northern kingdom kings, says that Omri is a bad king and did wickedly in the way of God, before the eyes of God. His son is Ahab. Ahab is declared to be early on the worst of the kings of Israel, because he encouraged the worship of Baal. Remember, he married Jezebel, and she brought with her religious traditions from a pagan land, and she kind of oversaw the implementation of it. So, she actually has a lot of the priests who were loyal to the true religion killed, and sends many of them in hiding. Sends them running for their lives. Elijah is the main prophet who works in those days, calling Ahab and Jezebel to account for their unfaithfulness before Almighty God. And Jezebel, is the one who chases Elijah out of the country, threatening to kill him. You may remember that scene. It's in 1 Kings 19. It's after the Mount Carmel contest, and Elijah, that powerful demonstration of God's power and presence when he defeats the prophets of Baal and kills many of those prophets that are there that day. And it looks like revival's taking place, but it doesn't. And so Elijah gets really depressed and discouraged, and he just runs out of the territory because Jezebel's coming after him, and she wants to kill him for having killed all those prophets of Baal. And he goes outside of the country, past the southern kingdom, and he ends up having that encounter on Mount Sinai with God, where, he hears God's present in the still small voice. Elijah is told he wants to quit. He really wants God to take his life. But God basically says, buck up, you're getting back to work. And one of the things he tells him he's going to do, two things, he's going to anoint Elijah to be his successor as a prophet, and he's going to see to it that Jehu, Jehu, becomes king in Israel, and that he will bring judgment upon Ahab's house. There's a reason I'm telling you all this. Just hang in there. So Jehu is the one who will execute judgment against Ahab's house, and he plays into what we're going to be talking about as we read through these chapters here in just a minute. But remember, the past couple weeks as we've been talking about Jehoshaphat, we're back in the southern kingdom now. King Jehoshaphat was a good king, but he had a weakness, and his weakness was he sought to make alliances with Israel. And remember, he made that one alliance with Ahab, and the result of that was a military defeat and Ahab's death. And then he made another alliance along the way, but worse than anything, his son Jehoram marries Ahab and Jezebel's daughter, Athaliah. So now you've got a king in the southern kingdom, Jehoram, whose wife is tied to Ahab's family, the Omri dynasty. It's called the Omri dynasty, but Omri and then Ahab. So that's where that influence, and that's why Jehoshaphat, was castigated for his alliances, because he's bringing this influence upon the southern kingdom. And that's the major point in our stories today, is that negative influence, that influence from Ahab, that influence towards idolatrous worship, bringing in the Baals and setting up worship sites for the Baals, that's brought into the southern kingdom. And Jehoshaphat helped to, set that in motion with his joining in these alliances. but also his son Jehoram marrying Athaliah. We're going to see she's directly responsible for Jehoram's son going the way he goes when he becomes king. So, even though we're thinking about the southern kingdom kings, and we're going to be talking about Ahaziah there on the right, you see Jehoram, you see Jehoshaphat, Jehoram, Ahaziah, Queen Athaliah. That's where we are in our thinking and talking in 2nd Chronicles. And remember that Athaliah is the daughter of Ahab and Jezebel from the northern kingdom. So it's the influence of Ahab that's filtering into the southern kingdom that's in play here in what we're going to read. Okay, you good and confused? All right. So we're looking at chapters 22 and 23. And we talked about Jehoram last week in chapters 20, 21. Jehoram is the son of Jehoshaphat. Remember that when Jehoram became king, and Jehoram is married to Athaliah. Jehoram and Athaliah, they're married. Jehoram is the king of the southern kingdom. And remember we read last week about how Jehoram, when he became king, murdered his brothers. So there'd be nobody else. Remember, Jehoshaphat had many sons, and he gave gifts to all the sons. And he only chose Jehoram because he was the oldest. But Jehoram murders his brothers so that, he's got the power locked in. And Jehoram is married to Athaliah. So what does Jehoram do? He instigates the Baal worship in Judah, in the southern kingdom. God's not pleased with that. Jehoram dies that horrible death, that bowel disease issue thing we read about at the end of chapter 21, where his bowels come out. That's God's judgment against him for being such a bad king. And so he dies, and of course, naturally, one of his sons is going to take the kingdom, right? That's what happens. Remember, these are the Davidic line of kings. So the succession is set in motion. In the northern kingdom, there is no Davidic line of kings. It's just whoever can get the power and hold on to it and pass it on to his next of kin or whoever he chooses. And if they don't get assassinated, then they get to be king. That's pretty much what goes on in the northern kingdom. And the southern kingdom is the Davidic line. And so Jehoram's next, the one who should succeed Jehoram should be his oldest son. But guess what happens before, once Jehoram dies? Pick up reading there, the red on that first page. The inhabitants of Jerusalem made his youngest son, that is Jehoram's youngest son, Ahaziah, king as its successor. Why did they do that? The troops who came with the Arabs to the camp had killed the older sons. Now, we don't know really what stands behind that detail. We don't know the details behind that particular detail. But there was a raid that came into Judah, a raid of some of the neighboring states, countries, and they killed the sons, all the sons of Jehoram except the youngest, who was Ahaziah. So there's only one son left to take the throne. That's Ahaziah. Now pause for a second and remember what we said last week too. Jehoram, God's punishment against him was that he started to have to deal with the enemy nations all around him. During Jehoshaphat's reign, there was peace. And he was left alone, and they were able to enjoy prosperity undisturbed. But because of God's judgment against Jehoram, the neighboring states are now doing battle against Judah and finding ways to get in and to do bad things to them and try to take lands. And so there is one effort made by the troops who came in with the Arabs. And again, we don't know all the details to that. they come in and they kill most of the sons of Jehoram. So that's what Jehoram has set in motion, because he has followed in the way of Ahab instead of in the way of Jehoshaphat. And he's introduced the worship of Baal in Judah, and God's punishment is upon him. Already, most of his sons are taken away as a result of his infidelity. So Ahaziah is left. Verse 2, Ahaziah was 42 years old when he began to reign. He reigned for 1 year in Jerusalem. That tells you what you need to know right off the bat. It's not going to be good. And it tells you why. Next sentence. His mother's name was Athaliah. Remember, the daughter of Jezebel and Ahab, granddaughter of Omri. Remember, Omri, Ahab, that's the Omride line. Verse 3. Ahaziah also walked in the ways of the house of Ahab, for his mother was his counselor in doing wickedly. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, as the house of Ahab had done, for after the death of his father, they were his counselors to his ruin. He even followed their advice and went with Jehoram, son of King Ahab of Israel, to make war against King Hazael of Aram at Ramoth Gilead. The Arameans wounded Joram, and he returned to be healed in Jezreel of the wounds that he had received at Ramah when he fought King Hazael of Aram. And Ahaziah, son of King Jehoram of Judah, went down to see Joram, son of Ahab, in Jezreel because he was sick. Okay, you got all these names floating around, so pay attention here. The Ahab's son, and you can go back and look at your sheet, okay? You see, after Ahab, Joram is the next ruler in Jerusalem. So we're talking about him. He even followed their advice and went with, and it says Jehoram, but Joram and Jehoram, referring to the king in Israel, the same person, okay? Son of King Ahab of Israel, to make war against King Hazael of Aram at Ramoth Gilead. Remember on that map that I gave you, Ramoth Gilead, Aram is to the east. It's up here. It's to the east of Israel. This is the kingdom of Israel. Aram is over here, and they've gone to do battle against the Arameans, to take land from them. So Joram, the son of Ahab, has gotten Ahaziah into an alliance to go fight the Arameans. Remember, with Jehoshaphat, it was against God's way for him to make alliances with Israel. Well, that's exactly what Ahaziah is doing. He's making alliances with Israel and going to fight battles. So they've gone into Aram at Ramoth Gilead. Joram is wounded there, and so he returns to be healed in Jezreel of the wounds that he had received at Ramah. Jezreel, just so you know, is up here in the northern part of the northern kingdom. So they'd gone over here and were fighting the Arameans, and Joram gets wounded, and so they go to Jezreel, where he's going to convalesce. And Ahaziah goes to be with him. Not a smart move. Continuing on in the text. Verse 7, the top of the next page with the red text. But it was ordained by God that the downfall of Ahaziah should come about through his going to visit Joram. For when he came there, he went out with Jehoram, or Joram, to meet Jehu, son of Nimshi. Jehu, okay, we just talked about him a while ago. Who is Jehu? He is the man that God raised up to wipe out the house of Ahab and to become king of Israel. Jehu is now carrying that out. Jehu comes, and so they go out to do battle against Jehu. whom the Lord had anointed to destroy the house of Ahab. When Jehu was executing judgment on the house of Ahab, he met the officials of Judah and the sons of Ahaziah's brothers who attended Ahaziah, and he killed them. In other words, Ahaziah had come and he'd brought his men, and they were there at Jezreel. And when Jehu came out against them, all his men are there. And so Jehu kills them. Ahaziah, he searched for Ahaziah, verse 9, who was captured while hiding in Samaria and was brought to Jehu and put to death. Ahaziah is killed by Jehu. Ahaziah is the king in Judah, but because of his alliance with Israel, and because he goes to Joram in his convalescence period in Jezreel, he is taken as well. And so he loses his life. This is why he's only 1 year on the throne in Jerusalem. And so they do bury him in the house of his fathers, for he is the grandson of Jehoshaphat, who sought the Lord with all his heart. Well, because Jehoshaphat, his grandfather, was a godly man, he gets a burial. He's not just left to the dogs to be eaten. He's honored, because of Jehoshaphat, not because of himself. Last sentence of that paragraph. And the house of Ahaziah had no one able to rule the kingdom. Remember, all of Ahaziah's brothers are dead. That tribe that came in with the Arabs had killed all the brothers except Ahaziah. And all this goes back to Joram, their father, who had done wickedly. Joram married to Athaliah, and they had done wickedly in Judah. And so God's punishment, is visited upon him in every respect. Not only does Joram lose his life, but his sons are killed, except for Ahaziah. Now Ahaziah is killed. Is that making sense? Any questions? I know it's a lot of names and a lot of craziness, but it does fit together. Well, who's going to rule? Who's going to rule Judah now? The queen mother. Verse 10. Now when Athaliah, Ahaziah's mother, saw that her son was dead, she set about to destroy all the royal family of the house of Judah. That's a key sentence. Pay attention to that. She set about to destroy all the royal family of the house of Judah. Remember, Judah is the Davidic line. The kings come from the Davidic line. If you wipe out the whole line, then there's no more Davidic line to put kings on the throne in Judah. This is a big issue. You don't have a flashing neon light here, but this is a big issue because God had promised David that there would always be a son on the throne. And of course, who is the eventual descendant who comes from the line of David is Christ. So this has messianic implications. And so, God's work through David's line is being threatened here. And she means to do it. Remember, she's the daughter of Ahab and Jezebel, the granddaughter of Omri. And from the northern kingdom, which has no line of David running through its kings. So she decides that she's going to destroy the whole thing, destroy the whole royal family. Verse 11, but Jehoshabeth, and in my notes I've got Jehoshabah, which is the same person. It's in 1 Kings, it's Jehoshabah. Here it's Jehoshabeth. The king's daughter, that is Ahaziah's daughter, took Joash, son of Ahaziah, and stole him away from among the king's children who were about to be killed. Athaliah is killing her children, okay? You see what's going on here. She's killing her offspring. And, we're not told whether or not Joash is her son. Probably not. He had consorts, concubines, whatnot, so we don't know exactly any of that there. But Jehoshabeth, the king's daughter, takes Joash, son of Ahaziah, and takes him into the temple. She puts him in a bedroom with his nurse. Thus Jehoshabeth, daughter of King Jehoram and wife of the priest Jehoiada, because she was a sister of Ahaziah, hid him from Athaliah so that she did not kill him. He remained with them, that is, Joash, for 6 years, hidden in the house of God, while Athaliah reigned over the land. So Athaliah takes over. She's queen. And she tried to destroy all the offspring. But the daughter, Jehoshabeth, who's married to the priest, Jehoiada, hides Joash in the temple. Does that remind you of any other stories in the Old Testament? You ever heard of a guy named Moses? Yeah. This is very similar, very similar. The Savior is hidden from death, is kept from being killed before he gets to carry out his work. Joash is in the temple, being cared for there by a nurse and being protected from Athaliah, who is now reigning over the kingdom. She obviously doesn't know about Joash. All right, so go to chapter 23. But in the 7th year, Jehoiada took courage and entered into a compact with the commanders of the hundreds. Azariah, son of Jeroham, Ishmael, son of Jehohanan, Azariah, son of Obed, Maaseiah, son of Adaiah, and Elishaphat, son of Zikri. These are all the military leaders in the land. They went about through Judah and gathered the Levites from all the towns of Judah and the heads of families of Israel, and they came to Jerusalem. So Jehoiada's gathering all the official leadership from Judah into Jerusalem. And he's waited, he's bided his time. She's been on the throne for 6 years. This is a secret plan, obviously. And what's he trying to do? He's trying to instigate her overthrow. After all, the real king, the one who belongs on the throne, is in his care and keep in the temple. So he gathers all the leaders from around, brings them to Jerusalem, and he does it at the right time, at the right moment. Verse 3, then the whole assembly, this assembly of leaders, makes a covenant with the king in the house of God. Jehoiada said to them, here's the king's son. Let him reign as the Lord promised concerning the sons of David. Key verse again. Let him reign as the Lord promised concerning the sons of David. They are preserving the Davidic line. They're preserving God's promise to provide for David a descendant on the throne. And as we know the bigger picture, one of those descendants will be the Savior of the world. Verse 4, this is what you are to do. So he's given instructions. 1/3 of you, priests and Levites who come on duty on the Sabbath, shall be gatekeepers. 1/3 shall be at the king's house, and 1/3 at the gate of the foundation. And all the people shall be in the courts of the house of the Lord. Do not let anyone enter the house of the Lord except the priests and ministering Levites. They may enter, for they are holy, but all the other people shall observe the instructions of the Lord. The Levites shall surround the king, each with his weapons in his hand, and whoever enters the house shall be killed. Stay with the king in his comings and goings. You see what's going on? He's arranging for Joash to be surrounded by protection. He's setting everything up for the moment when Athaliah figures out what's going on and she comes to try and undo it. He's setting up all the protection. He's making all the provisions for Joash to be crowned king of Judah. Jehoiada, you never heard of him before. I know you haven't. I don't know his name very well either. Verse 8, the Levites and all Judah did according to all that the priest Jehoiada commanded. Each brought his men who were to come on duty on the Sabbath with those who were to go off duty on the Sabbath. For the priest Jehoiada did not dismiss the divisions. They're working round the clock. The priest Jehoiada delivered to the captains the spears and the large and small shields that had been King David's, which were in the house of God. Underline that sentence in your mind too. The weapons that had been King David's, they were kept in the house of the Lord, and they are distributed to the Levites to protect Joash, the king who is to reign. Verse 10, and he set all the people as a guard for the king, everyone with weapon in hand, from south side of the house to the north side of the house, around the altar and the house. Then he brought out the king's son, put the crown on him, and gave him the covenant. They proclaimed him king, and Jehoiada and his sons anointed him, and they shouted, "Long live the king!" Everything's set up for the coronation of the king. And they know what's going to come, and you're going to read about what comes in just a second. And so that's why all the protection has been arranged. This is a coup. Athaliah is sitting on the throne even though she doesn't belong there, and even though she's a wicked queen, and even though she has usurped power, but still she's on the throne. And you know she's got people under her. You can't sit on the throne for 6 years unless you have assembled some form of power and people under you. So they are well prepared for what comes next. Verse 12, the next paragraph I've read. When Athaliah heard the noise of the people running and praising the king, she went into the house of the Lord to the people. That is, she entered into the gates of the temple. And when she looked, there was the king standing by his pillar at the entrance, and the captains and the trumpeters beside the king, and all the people of the land rejoicing and blowing trumpets, and the singers with their musical instruments leading the celebration. Athaliah tore her clothes and cried, "Treason, treason!" She's trying to stir up her supporters, right? Treason, treason! They're taking the throne away from me. Verse 14. Then the priest Jehoiada brought out the captains who were set over the army, saying to them, "Bring her out between the ranks. Anyone who follows her is to be put to the sword. Choose you this day whom you will serve." Is basically what he's saying to the crowds. For the priest said, "Do not put her to death in the house of the Lord, not even in the courtyard." So they laid hands on her. She went into the entrance of the house gate of the king's house, and there they put the horse gate of the king's house, and there they put her to death. She's queen no longer. Joash is king. They've restored the Davidic line. But they're not finished. Verse 16, Jehoiada made a covenant between himself and all the people and the king that they should be the Lord's people. Then all the people went to the house of Baal and tore it down. His altars and his images they broke in pieces. And they killed Matan, the priest of Baal, in front of the altars. You see how the cult of Baal has been established in Judah, in Jerusalem. No doubt this is all before the temple in some sort of fashion or close to the temple courts. Jehoiada assigned the care of the house of the Lord to the Levitical priests, whom David had organized to be in charge of the house of the Lord, to offer burnt offerings to the Lord as is written in the law of Moses, with rejoicing and with singing according to the order of David. Jehoiada's reestablishing the religious cult of Yahweh, Israel's true God. He stationed the gatekeepers at the gates of the house of the Lord so that no one should enter who was in any way unclean. And he took the captains, the nobles, the governors of the people, and all the people of the land, and they brought the king down from the house of the Lord, marching through the upper gate to the king's house. They set the king on the royal throne, so all the people of the land rejoiced, and the city was quiet after Athaliah had been killed with a sword. So they establish Joash on the throne in the king's house after having deposed Athaliah and having purged Jerusalem especially, but the land of Judah as well, of the cult of Baal. Joash, by the way, is 7 years old. And it's supposed that Jehoiada continues to be the main influence in Joash's reign. Obviously, a 7-year-old isn't going to be able to make a whole lot of decisions about national affairs. So Jehoiada and the court that he has assembled, around the king, They are the ones who are ordaining what's taking place and what will happen. But again, this story is about the threat to the Davidic line and how God acted through Jehoiada and Jehoshabeth to thwart it, to defeat it. Obvious lessons stand before us. Be careful who you hang out with. Be careful who you associate with. There are no, every relationship you have, there is influence peddling going on in both directions. Always is. Always is. It's natural. It's normal. But the dynamic is going in one direction or the other, probably. And so either you're the greater influence on the other person than that person is on you, or they're a greater influence on you than you are on them. But even beyond that, what kind of influence is this one with whom you are connected? This is why, it's a in Israel, the idea that the Israelites should be holy and kept to themselves, and they should not intermarry with other peoples. And it sounds racist and all this kind of horrible, terrible stuff. It was so that the people of God could keep pure in the way of God. They were called to be a holy people in all the nations, among all the nations. And God knew that when they started intermarrying with other peoples, what was going to happen. See, that's why we Baptists should never let any of our kids marry Methodists or Presbyterians or any of those other kind of ill-begotten folk. They end up, how many people have I met since I've been here who used to come to this church, but then they got married and they're over at this church or that church or that church? That's a playful thing, obviously, but it's true, right? When you bring families together, there's give and take, there's push and pull, there's influence. For Israel, it was a serious matter because all the nations around Israel worshiped other gods. And this is Israel's number one problem all throughout her history. She kept worshiping the other gods instead of the Lord God Almighty. Rather, the people kept worshiping other gods alongside their worship of the Lord God Almighty. They thought they could have it both ways. We'll worship the Lord, but we'll mix in a little Baalism with it. We'll cover all the bases. That's the number one sin behind all of God's judgment against Israel over all those years. Because God had called Israel to be a holy people unto himself alone. Yeah. And he did well for most of those years. We're going to read about him next. Joash reigned for 39 years. And he had a good reign. Wasn't perfect. And he tended to lose touch with where he should be towards the end. But influence, so very important. Don't ever discount it. The other thing to take away from this is the call to courage. Jehoiada really ought to be one of those, Jehoiada and Jehoshabeth ought to be two of our favorite biblical heroes. We never talk about them because we never read 2 Chronicles. But what a great story. What a powerful story. And they rose up. Certainly God called them to rise up. I love the way it's put in the text there. Where is it? In the 7th year, first verse in chapter 23. But in the 7th year, Jehoiada took courage. It's like he finally worked it up. He knew what he had to do. You can imagine he wrestled with this, and he felt a call from God to stand up and do something. And in the 7th year, it was time. And he stood up. He put himself at great risk. And he did a huge thing, gathering all that leadership from around the country and doing it under wraps. But what a great hero. What a great hero. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I mean, you could make some great movies, in this stuff. I mean, I'll have to provide you some of the history book stuff that talks about all the political manipulations going on in the Northern Kingdom. But I mean, people were getting assassinated right and left. I mean, they'd be king for 7 days and that was it. I mean, there was a lot of, and again, it's the Northern Kingdom and there is no history there. There's no tradition. They are making it up as they go. Whereas Judah is what God has ordained and what God has set in motion to carry out his purposes. And that's why it was so important for Jehoiada and for Jehoshabeth to stand up and do what they did. But yeah, she's Marion. She hides Moses, from the vicious Queen Mother. Closing thoughts or comments? See, I told y'all Second Chronicles would be good. First and Second Chronicles. A lot of good stuff in there. All right, thanks for being here. Catch you next week. Hope to catch you this Sunday. Thanks to anybody who's watching by way of YouTube today as well.